Well, the government of Palm Springs, California, out in the desert, is plotting a war on racist trees. Since the 1960s, a row of tamarisk trees has separated Tahquitz Creek Golf Course from a historically black neighborhood. Now, locals say the trees were planted with racist intent, and the city plans to clear-cut them as a result, as punishment. The cost? $169,000. Trey Daniel is a Palm Springs resident who supports cutting down the racist trees, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Daniel, thanks a lot for coming on.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to put up on the screen, at first I thought, wow, this is a crazy story, but then I thought, we've learned a lot about what's racist in 2017. Here are some of the things we've learned this year are racist, okay? Ice cream trucks, car insurance, The Little Mermaid, Dr. Suess, milk, math, science, the Bible, grammar, the iPhone X, emojis, jingle bells, babies, solar eclipse, the anti-racist book To Kill a Mockingbird is racist, and of course Apu from The Simpsons. Now trees in Palm Springs are racist. Can you tell us how you reach this conclusion? What racist sentiments have they expressed to you? How can you prove these trees are racist?
These trees, Tucker, are not racist. You're the one that said they're racist. A tree is neutral. It's benign. And it's not the tree. It is the individuals and their intent when that particular type of tree was planted in that particular location back in 1958, 59, 60, 61.
Right.
You see, that neighborhood on the 14th and 15th fairway is the original African-American neighborhood of Palm Springs.
Right.
Now, as late as 1950, the National Board of Realtors had in their code of ethics, and I'm paraphrasing, that no realtor should be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood any race or nationality that will cause property values to deteriorate. Now,
I'm aware of that. We had a lot of law. I mean, a lot of awful things were in those codes. I know that.
That's right. And yes, they were. And you see that golf course, that black housing development in 1960 is right on the 14th and 15th fairway. You build golf courses for one purpose, and that's to sell homes. You cannot sell homes to white people or anyone else
hold on.
a golf course in 1960.
Hold on. No, but you also build golf courses to play golf. But I'm wondering, so I have no doubt, I mean, though you haven't proved it, but I'm willing to believe you that there was racist intent in planting these trees and in a lot of things going on in this country 55 years ago. But why are we punishing the trees for that? You just conceded.
We're not punishing
that
trees.
They're not, well,
as I said,
killing
the trees
them.
are benign. Because the African-American, the black families whose properties are adjacent to those trees, and if you've done any research on the tree, you'll know that's one of the nastiest trees around, and it's also been declared an environmental disaster by the federal government.
What?
They grow to be 60
because
feet
it's
tall,
a wait, no, slow down. Now, well,
wide.
hold on. Now, hold on. Because that tree is a foreign tree, you're calling it nasty? Okay,
absolutely.
I guess the California I grew up in was a little bit more welcoming to foreigners. Just because the tree's not from California doesn't mean you have to kill it and call it names like racist.
Then why is the federal? We're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that tree, and the way it is not maintained has depressed and deprived black families whose properties are contiguous to and adjacent to the 14th and 15th fairway for 65 years from enjoying, and their property taxpayers, from enjoying the same economic benefits of being on a golf course, the same aesthetic benefits, and the same social benefits.
Has it protected those houses from golf balls at all? I mean, there's always an upside to these things.
People don't go out and say, we're doing this for a racist reason. They go out and say, we're going to give you landscaping. In fact, we're going to landscape you right out of existence. And oh, by the way, these trees are going to protect you from golf balls. And oh, by the way,
well, but there's some truth in that, isn't there?
We could have planted eucalyptus. Look,
I don't want to. The people who made these decisions,
but they didn't.
Right, I got it.
Only this tree on this section of the golf course.
Okay. Don't attack the trees again. I found that offensive just because they're not from California. But let me just ask a final question. The people who made these decisions are long dead in almost every case. And yet you're still hell-bent on killing these trees, who, by your own admission, committed no sin, did nothing wrong. Does that seem a little unfair? Shouldn't we punish the guilty and not the innocent?
I really take exception to what you just said. This has nothing to do with the trees. It has to do with black families and their
they're just getting killed in it, but it's nothing to do with them. They're just kind of in the way. You know, if you were a tree, you might feel a little differently, and maybe meditate on that
are you a tree?
Tonight. I'm not.
What species of
but
tree
at
are
least
you?
I'm big enough to think about their perspective in this, and you're
and
killing
you're not
them.
concerned about the black people and their property values.
No, and I'm not saying I'm not
concerned. You would rather save a tree. You would rather save a tree than help a black family.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm merely
exactly
saying,
what you're
why
saying.
punish
Why
the innocent?
Why would you not help these black families improve their property values?
Well,
and give
I would
them
love
the
to
same
have them
rights
on
as
and talk
taxpayers
about it.
That all the white
but I'm
families
just
do
not
on this
convinced.
golf
Hold on,
course.
slow down. I'm just not convinced that trees need to die to make you feel better. That's it. But look, just think about that and come back. We can continue this conversation. I wish we had more time. Trey, thank you. It's just one video shot on a cell phone recently at the University of California at Riverside, but it tells you a lot about what our kids are learning at school and therefore where we may be heading as a country. In the video, a student called Edith Suess sees a man wearing a Make America Great Again hat and becomes so enraged that she steals it off his head. He demands it back, she refuses, and this exchange ensues. Watch.
You know what this represents? This represents genocide.
I understand.
Genocide of a bunch of people.
You do not get to take other people's property that is legally theirs in this country.
Man, your laws. You're recording me like I'm the criminal here.
Because you stole my property. That is literally a crime.
Land. Your ancestors stole this land.
That is
I hate this country.
That's why I say leave.
I hate it, and I'm not leaving.
That's why I say leave.
I'm staying here because there needs to be fixed here, so that's why I'm staying.
Okay. Then
all
you
right?
don't. But you don't fix it by
because
breaking the laws.
we need to get rid of all y'all. Freedom of speech, boy. It.
I don't care what you have to say.
Because your freedom of speech is literally killing a lot of people out there. That's what it is. Because you're out there wearing hats like these that promote laws and legislations that literally kill and murder in the masses people of color.
F your laws. I hate this country, and I'm staying here anyway. Your ancestors stole this land. Your free speech is killing people. It used to be that only the ignorant or the insane talk that way. Yet this is a woman who completed high school and is now receiving a college education, and that's what's changed. Edith Suess talks this way precisely because she was educated in America. She learned these views in school. She and millions of other students who for the past 30 years have been taught to hate America, its laws, its customs, its history. While the rest of us are busy at work raising families, our children are learning that America itself is illegitimate and evil. To them, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are not seminal documents protecting essential freedoms. They're scraps of paper complicit in some vaguely defined genocide. Edith Suess has learned that America is rotten, and therefore she believes she has no positive obligations to our society. She believes that people who look like the founders of this country are stained with blood guilt, and it is her right, even her duty, to hate them and to punish them for the crime of existing. She didn't come to any of this on her own. She was taught it. Millions of young people are learning the same lessons. Every time an athlete protests the national anthem or a school bans American flags on Cinco de Mayo, those lessons are reinforced. This is the future the left is creating. Once you accept that everything older than the milk in your fridge is morally reprehensible and must be destroyed, the entire past starts to look like an uninterrupted nightmare of bigotry and oppression. You begin to see racism everywhere, even here.
The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right.
That's right. Dr. Suess has been called out as a racist. A month ago, Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis were the designated villains. Their statues were toppled. Their existences purged from popular memory. But the revolution has gathered steam since then. Now, a librarian in Massachusetts has rejected First Lady Melania Trump's gift of Dr. Seuss's books, claiming the illustrations are, quote, racist caricatures. Well, the Cat in the Hat is a wonderful cat, but leftists could not be contented with that. In modern America, everything's racist, they'll say as they search for invisible traces. A wonderful cat in a hat can't be funny. He has to be mocking black people for money. And even if Dr. Seuss had no intention to do any wrong, they'll destroy his invention. You'd think that there's no way that this could be true, but for today's leftists, the limits are few. With each day's new outrage, they simmer and stew and suck in their faces until they turn blue. LaDawn Jones is a former Democratic state representative from the state of Georgia, and she joins us now. LaDawn, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me back, Tucker.
So I'll admit, as a middle-aged man who majored in history, not postmodern feminist poetry, this was confusing to me, and I mocked it at first. Dr. Seuss racist? He was a liberal. But then I read, as they say in graduate school, the text. And so I think I understand what's going on here. I want to read you a portion of The Cat in the Hat, and you confirm for me that this is in fact bigotry. I know some good games we could play, said the cat. I know some new tricks, said the Cat in the Hat. A lot of good tricks. I'll show them to you. Your mother will not mind at all if I do. The cat is being portrayed as shady and manipulative here. And that clearly is bigotry. I think you'd agree.
I don't know if I can agree with that. So, you know, we're going to whether or not Dr. Seuss had a history of racism in his past, and it is true. Now, will we call every Cat in the Hat, every Dr. Seuss book a picture of bigotry and racism? I think that may go a little bit too far.
Oh, I don't know. Then maybe, but hold on.
Point.
Wait, no, but you're not reading. Okay, so I guess I have an advantage here because I have, as we say in the Academy, the text right in front of me. I want to confront you with the text once more. Then Sally and I did not know what to say. Our mother was out of the house for the day. Now, if that's not a damaging stereotype of single parenthood, I don't know what is. And the idea that this kind of garbage winds up in the hands of preschoolers, I guess shouldn't surprise me given the racist nature of our country. Are you surprised?
You know, that's cute, Tucker, but the reality is, you know, that the librarian that called Dr. Seuss's works partly bigotry and racism spent the majority of her letter to the First Lady of the United States on something far more substantive. But of course, conservatives who want to accuse people who bring up racial issues as race baiting will only focus on that part of her letter.
No, but actually,
what is a serious situation?
But hold on. I don't think all bringing up racial issues is race baiting at all. I'm doing it now, and I'm not race baiting, and I think there are lots of legitimate conversations to have. I'm responding to something very specific she said, which was that Dr. Seuss is a racist. She said that. Now, this was troubling to me as someone who was weaned on Dr. Seuss, who raised 4 children on Dr. Seuss. And then I realized, and I think we have the pictures here, that it's not just my family, but famous political figures have endorsed Dr. Seuss, including the Obamas. And I think we may have actual documentary evidence of the Obamas reading Dr. Seuss. Oh, here it is. Watch.
Pretty much all the stuff you need to know is in Dr. Seuss.
Now, we're in a revolutionary moment where we're reassessing what we thought we knew. And I'm sure that you're an Obama supporter. In light of what he just said, so. Can you continue to support him?
Oh, absolutely. Because here's the reality for many African Americans and people of color in the United States. There are parts of American history, there are famous people in American history who we have to take them for their great parts and dismiss them for the parts of them that were brought up in some of the racist and biggest ways that America had in its history. And so Dr. Seuss, I actually had to, once I heard the story, pull out our Dr. Seuss books that are on my children's bookshelf and take a closer look at them so I can see exactly what it was that was the complaint. And as is normal for many of us.
What was it? I mean, actually, I've been obviously speaking tongue-in-cheek because this is, like, literally demented. But since you said that you checked Dr. Seuss for racism, what did you find? Where were the racist parts?
So you look at many of the drawings, and you have to put it in the context of the times that many of these books were written. And you can see that there are some very stereotypical drawings of Asian Americans. Dr. Seuss was known for some very stereotypical blackface drawings prior to the books that most of us are familiar with and know and have on our bookshelf.
What books are you talking about? I mean, I grew up not far from Dr. Seuss in California. Theodore Geisel, he was kind of a local hero, big liberal, as I'm sure you know, and he wrote a bunch of books against racism, including The Sneetches, great book. I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I don't think he did many books where he illustrated people. What books specifically on your bookshelf were racist?
Absolutely. No, not specific books. He was actually a cartoonist for political ads. And so if you, a simple Google search, and the first few images that will pop up of Dr. Seuss, you will see where he drew very stereotypical black-faced pictures of individuals, and of people portraying stereotypical views of Asian Americans and African Americans. It's common.
So maybe you're leaving out a little
to it.
Do you think you're leaving out some context? The Asian Americans you're talking about were the Imperial Japanese government during the Second World War, the ones who took over Asia and raped and tortured hundreds of thousands of people to death. So you think it's racist that he portrayed that government in an unflattering light? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would imagine that if I were to draw some of the Confederate soldiers in the same kind of light that he did, despite the fact that they were treasonous, people will still find many of those caricatures, if I took their worst features and put it out there and made fun of them, they will call that racist too. So yes, actually
well, I don't know who
do.
they
It doesn't matter if
but
they were
I think
bad people.
it's okay to, I think it was okay in 1943 to mock the Japanese army, and so maybe it's lacking a little
Tucker,
historical context. It's not okay. It's not okay. Who put you in charge of what's okay? Like, wait, let me just ask: is there any recognition? I know we're like debating on TV and everything, but do part of you think like, wow, the people I'm around, maybe even myself, we're scolds. We've like turned into something we used to hate when we were kids, which is people who jump up and say, "You can't do that." I mean, do you ever think that? Like, what have I become? That I'm denouncing Dr. Seuss?
Well, no. I'm going to tell you what is the first thing that normally comes to my mind is respecting the person who is near me, respecting the people who are around me. I may have private opinions, but there's certain things that you don't say out loud. There's certain things that you stop yourself from thinking out of simple human respect for common man. For example, a perfect one is when your president calls an entire league SOBs. Those are things that you just don't say out of your mouth, particularly when you are a person of power. And so although you may accept it in your community to just say, oh, we talk about people of other races as if it's not a problem, I think a good human American to make America great again knows that we respect our neighbors.
I love the parenthetical charge of racism. In your community, you might do that. No, actually, he's denouncing professional athletes of a bunch of different colors. So slow down, Ladon. But you're dodging my key question, which is why in the world is the left discrediting itself by going after, of all people, Dr. Seuss? Like, it's absurd. Do you recognize that at all? I think there's racism that exists. I mean, of course there is. But Dr. Seuss was not a major purveyor of it. So, like, why are you hassling Dr. Seuss? That's kind of the question. Do you feel silly when you do that?
Absolutely not. And let me tell you what's absurd. This librarian who brought up this whole Dr. Seuss issue had a whole 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs before she talked about Dr. Seuss that talked about how ridiculous it was that they used taxpayer dollars to send books to overprivileged schools that didn't need them. But instead of focusing on that very important point that you should agree with since you're a fiscal conservative, you want to focus on the latter part of her letter that talks about Dr. Seuss. You know why? Because you want to trivialize what really could be an important issue.
I mean, she sounds like the silliest person maybe who's ever lived in this country.